This Saturday, it's the kickoff to Super Wild Card Weekend. And for the first time, an NFL playoff game will stream exclusively on Peacock.
Unbelievable!
It all starts at 4:30 Eastern with the Browns and Texans on NBC and Peacock. And then witness history when the Chiefs host the Dolphins at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on Peacock.
The season comes down to this.
Go to peacocktv.com/NFL to learn more.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conway Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. In a minute, I'm going to be joined by my good friend Mike Jones from The Athletic as we discuss the Commanders' head coaching opening. How does it compare to the other situations in the NFL? Mike and I are going to talk to a lot of people about this opening. He said that, well, you'll hear what he has to say. I would just say that a lot of people I've talked to would view this, certainly if not the best, one of the top two probably. I think Mike is hearing maybe, I don't know if he's hearing quite the same thing I am, but certainly almost all of the people he's talking to seem to put this in their top three, but he can explain that in a minute. But I would say, I've talked to multiple people who feel like this would be the preferred opening for a lot of people. And when you look at the job openings, you have to look first and foremost at the ownership group. And I think there's some excitement about what this group might provide for a coach. There's no track record of what they won't do. They do have a track record of what they've done for their other sports teams, but no track record in the NFL beyond just a few months. So there seems to be a blank slate, and I think that's going to help them get somebody. But we'll see. Way to go. But I did want to bring Mike on because I want to have another national perspective on how he perceives the situation and the people he's talking to, because we're not always going to talk to the same people, clearly. So I always like to have their input because it may be a little bit different than mine, and I want you guys to hear more than just one opinion or voice. So very important to get as much information as you can, and Mike's going to provide that. He's very good. Anyway, enough about that. I'll get to that in a couple minutes, but it's down to two candidates for the president of football operations position. And it's the two names that I've talked a lot about, and, Adam Peters and Ian Cunningham. And I think by now, because this came out Thursday. So that's not news. What is news is that, well, there's no news necessarily because the names. The question is when will they settle on somebody? And that remains to be seen. Now, it's very possible that by Monday, this is all wrapped up. The question will be, can they negotiate a contract with their preferred candidate between the time you hear this and Monday? I don't know. That could be the one thing that takes a little bit longer and maybe pushes it a couple of days into next week. But both the candidates, Cunningham and Peters, are expected to have a second interview. And by the time you hear this, it's very possible that one of them will have already had that second interview. And then it's just a matter of deciding on which one they want. I think, listen, I've heard really good things about both men. I think if you talk to people in the league, they would peg Peters as the guy that any team would want to hire. I think, I had one person who's been in the league a long time, knows both men very well, said that Peters would be a grand slam hire for this franchise. And that, certainly the guy is very, very, very interested in this position. And so I think, but this guy was effusive in his praise for Peters about what he could do for the Washington Commanders organization and what he's helped do in San Francisco. And because they needed a guy like him when you had John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, neither of whom had experience in those roles that they were going into, to have somebody who could do what Adam Peters is doing for out there. So the same person really likes Ian Cunningham, but I do think there's a stronger lean toward Peters from people that I talk to in the league. Now, whether or not Washington goes that way, I will say this: they're very well aware of how he is perceived in the NFL circles. So, but with Cunningham, I think, like I said, this is a choice between two really good alternatives here. And I texted somebody who worked with Cunningham in the past, and what do you think of them? Because I don't always know. Just because you work with someone doesn't mean you're going to like them, or doesn't mean you're going to respect them. But the text I got back was love him with like multiple exclamation points next to that. And so just felt like he was a really good evaluator and a grinder, that kind of stuff. So anyways, I'll get into more of that depending on who they pick, because I've tried to get as much information on these people as possible, just so I can share that with you and what others have told me and what might make them a really good choice for Washington. We don't really know, because there's a lot of unknowns with all this, but it's the first big hire for the Harris Group. And then once they get through that, then they can get into the coaching round of interviews. So here's the deal. Teams that are involved in the wild card round the coaches cannot interview until 3 days after their wild card game. So that, there's a handful of guys like that. It's Ben Johnson, who, obviously is going to be a top candidate for anybody. Dan Quinn, Bobby Slowick, Raheem Morris, Aaron Glenn. They can talk to guys like Anthony Weaver and Mike McDonald before this, because they're off this week. Those are two of the other candidates. And then once whomever is hired as the president of football ops, they might end up having more people they want to reach out to based on their own connection. So anyway, so it's going to get interesting starting next week. That's why I think you want to get this cleaned up right away and get somebody hired and in there. So there you go. That's what we have there. And there'll be more. Follow, if there's somebody that's hired over the weekend, I'm going to post a video over the weekend, or post a podcast over the weekend if somebody gets hired. And if at the very latest, or at the very least, I'll have something Monday morning, just kind of talking about some of this stuff again, because it's a big deal. This is the Harris Group's first big hire, and they need to get it right. They want to get it right, and they want to hit it out of the park. I don't think in the past, we know a guy here who would be more flash than substance, they would go for the big name hire just for that. And I remember I was talking to someone about that today, and they're like, that this would be the home run grand slam hire for them. Again, let's say it's Peters, and because this is the person that said it'd be a grand slam hire. He said the difference between this group and what Snyder would do is that before there'd be a lot of flash, now there'd be flash and substance with some of that stuff. And so that's why he said he'd be excited for this franchise if that's the direction they go. But again, this is someone who also liked Ian Cunningham as well. So we'll see where that goes. I don't know who Washington likes, and we'll find out probably within the next few days. So with all that being said, I did want to bring Mike on to talk about the Commanders opening, how it compares, and get us some other other related conversations. So there you go. Here's my conversation with my good pal, Mike Jones from The Athletic.
Did you know at Kroger, shopping online with pickup and delivery is the same as shopping in store? Same low prices, same personalized deals, same rewards, with no hidden fees or markups on your same family favorites, like Honeycrisp apples and pasta sauce. The only difference is you don't have to put on shoes. Start your cart today at Kroger.com. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL playoffs, is bringing you an offer that'll help make the playoffs electrifying. New customers can bet $5 on any game and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code KEIM, K-E-I-M. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code KEIM. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY In Connecticut, help is available. For problem gambling, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/football for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
Mike, this place, Washington, has changed a little bit since you covered them. I'm curious now, Josh Hare's been here for a little while. We got this opening now. How do you view this situation now, going forward?
I feel like it's a very good situation. And just last night, I was texting a bunch of coaches and coaches' agents just to get a gauge. Okay, so now we have 7 and possibly 8 openings. Where do these jobs stack up? Like, what's the most attractive? And how would you rank them? And a lot of people had Washington right up there. Nobody had them first, but I think if you're looking to come into a situation where you're going to have the resources and you're going to have time, this would be a spot that would be really attractive to you because you have the number 2 overall pick. You have 5 picks in the top 100. You have 86 million in cap space. And you have some young pieces that you could work with on this team. So it is a very good opportunity. It's one that in the past, coaches have looked at this place and been like, this is not the place you want to go. Or I remember when Gruden was going for this job, I was told that his brother, John Gruden, told him, look,
Yes.
that place is a car wash in reverse. You're going to go in clean and come out dirty. And, he still took the job. But this is not the same Washington where people were being told, warned about, I don't know if you want to go there. This is a new situation, fresh slate, lots of resources. And again, having that pick, it makes this a very attractive job.
And, to your point, it's funny because I've talked to probably a lot of the same people, and some would have it tops, some would have it top couple. Right.
Right.
But I'm curious, when they talk about it, what do you hear about what's important to them and why they think this place? What else about this? Is there anything else about the place? Is it Josh Harris? What is it about this place that maybe they look at it differently besides just Dan Snyder being out?
Well, no, I think it's just the freshness. You have an owner. Obviously, a lot of people, they don't know a whole lot about what to expect from Josh Harris. But the fact that he has had success in the NBA, he's had success, multiple sports teams and different sports leagues. But when you also see the people that he's reaching out to, bringing in Bob Myers, bringing in Spielman, people that to lean on to help him as he makes this decision as the coach, that's encouraging. But then again, also, look, you're going to have a really premium pick to start with. It's going to be a big building block. And you also have the resources to go in free agency. It's not like you're going to a situation where the cupboard's bare or okay, a lot of people will tell you that Carolina, I don't know if anybody. I think everybody I asked had Carolina as last.
Yeah.
Even though they have Bryce Young, which is a really talented young quarterback, but they have no draft picks now. And they, the cap is just okay. And just the owner that they're dealing with there. So there's not a single person who didn't put Washington up in the top 3. Nobody had them number 1. A lot of them were number 2 from me, from what I heard. And I think that, again, like we said, Josh Harris has got a track record of, turning things around, trusting the process. And then obviously you're going to have the resources, and you're coming in with the general manager at the same time that hopefully you guys will be joined at the hip in this process.
So what is there one spot that they say is the best job?
Most people will say that the Chargers are the best job because you have Justin Herbert, who's a talented young quarterback to already work with, and you also have a defense that's really good, got some really talented pieces there, and you just need to kind of tweak some things there. And you also have some talent on offense. So a lot of people said that. I was also surprised with the number of people that felt like Atlanta was a very attractive job. And, look, they've been 7-10, 3 straight years now. They don't know who their quarterback is. And so I was a little bit like, why do you say Atlanta? But because when you look at the rest of the roster, look, you've got Bijan Robinson, You've got Kyle Pitts, you got Drake London, you have, some talented pieces on defense. So it's a good young team. They play hard. And they've been, competitive. They haven't been able to get over that hump. And like I said, stuck at 7-10 the last 3 years. But it is a team full of players that play really hard. And also, people feel like it's an organization that has a track record of being stable, supportive owner. And so that's why Atlanta is a team that's right up there, which, this is when I was texting around last night and I was kind of surprised by that. And then what do you know? When the news comes out this morning about Bill Belichick, one of the first teams that's mentioned as a possibility, was Atlanta.
Right. And to be clear for people listening, Washington is not on the hunt
No,
for Bill
uh,
Belichick. Period.
no,
The end.
right.
So
I never heard a single thing like, oh, maybe or whatever like that. So and so then when I saw you had tweeted that too. Because I'm not as close. And I'm like, well, I don't see this, but Josh Harris doesn't have a big circle. So lots of times when I'm asking around, people are like, I don't know. But I never heard anybody with a rumbling that maybe there were different kind of other rumblings of other things, but not him. And so then when you tweeted that out, I was like, okay, all right, good. That made me feel a little bit better about my people who were
right.
supposedly being connected. I'm like, man, these people aren't hearing anything about this? Are they just not as? And so, well, that's why they hadn't heard
That's
anything about
why.
Belichick, because he's not on there.
Correct. Right. But I'm curious, so here's one of the things with like Atlanta and LA. And when you look at and it also like you said, the fact I like Atlanta's roster. So I actually my own list, I would have them in the top 3 because I like the roster they have. You just need a quarterback. The Chargers, my concern, I guess the beauty of it is you have the quarterback. If you like Justin Herbert, if you can go to the Super Bowl, you've got a guy to build around. I have questions maybe a little bit about the ownership there. I have questions about the LA market. How much does that matter to you? Does it not? And so I think, but like you conversely, like if you want to knock this one, well, you're going with the young quarterback, which is harder to win with. So if you're a veteran coach, maybe you don't want to go here because it may not be short-term success. Anyways, I'm curious, like from your end, like with the Chargers in Atlanta, what would be some of your concerns or I guess that.
Yeah, well, that was the one thing that was mentioned to me. A lot of people, again, a lot of people had the Chargers up there. But the one person that did say that they didn't think that Belichick would work there was because they said, look, you got an owner that, there's going to be a lot of meddling that kind of goes in there. And so that would be kind of a concern for me if I were going to send my guy here, is what this agent had told me. And other coaches, they didn't bring that up as much of a concern because I think that they felt like if they go in there, they're going to go in there with the GM and they're going to have a little bit of time. But again, yeah, nobody talked about concerns about the LA market. I think that they feel like if they win, now, I mean, me on the outside, but as far as coaches, they're looking at resources and what do you have to work with. And then you're like, the marketing and all that stuff, that's up to somebody else to worry about. For them, they're like, okay, look, I got a quarterback. Obviously they got to re-sign Austin Eckler, but they got some talented wide receivers. They've got 2 really great defensive players on the edges, which is, so your quarterback, your edge rushers among the most important pieces. And so they feel like, okay, hey, this team's got a chance. And also the division, you know, you've got, you've got the Chiefs, but the other teams in the division, there's nobody that's really scary for you right now, you know. Um, the Raiders, they're looking for a new head coach. The Broncos, we don't know how this thing is going to pan out with Sean Payton. It's looking a little bit, troublesome for him after 1 year. And so, they felt like the opportunity is there for them. As far as Atlanta goes, haven't heard concerns really. Only thing is that just, they don't have a great draft pick for, if you're going
Right.
to, draft a quarterback. But there are, quarterbacks in this draft. It's kind of deep. But at the same time, if you have all these young pieces, maybe you just need to plug in a veteran quarterback through free agency or something like that, and then be able to move on. But yeah, I didn't really hear a lot of concerns. And people think well of Arthur Blank, and you got a new stadium that it's only been open for a couple of years. and a city that really is into the team. And so Atlanta's a team. And also, that was also mentioned that, okay, that division is basically wide open almost every year, you know. And so that's a good opportunity for you to kind of go in there and
like I said, I like the roster. And the only thing like the market, a coach isn't going to care about that.
right,
And so like that may be something from like what's the attractiveness to an
right,
area, and like, hey, if you can win in, in like here, or there's certain markets, like if you can win in Philly or here, that you're elevated to a different level. They may not.
right,
Most coaches, like if you can win in Carolina, they're going to go
yeah,
there because they don't
right.
care. But
No, I think agents probably do think about that stuff when they're thinking about
yeah,
their client
and
and where
it's
they're putting them, you know,
and it's
probably
more
think
less
about it
about
more.
and it's less about the marketing for them, just about the football market
Right,
itself. Like, what kind of passion is there for that? Like the Chargers will always be number 2 out there. The Rams won, and yet, but I don't think, like, if you win, do you think Sean McVay cares? No, he
yeah,
won a
right,
Super
no,
Bowl title, so they don't care. And I also think, Mike, it almost seems like if you want to win now, one of those two is built to win more now, just with a couple additions with the Chargers, finding a quarterback, which is hard with the Falcons. Whereas
right.
I think if you're a young guy like a Ben Johnson or whatever, you get paired with an Adam Peters, do you have a chance to build what San Francisco has here? So I think they're different situations.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And some coaches don't have the appetite for a slow rebuild.
Right.
If you're a veteran guy, I think younger guys would be like, oh, hey, this gives me some time. Just like Kyle went into San Francisco, or Sean McVay went into with the Rams. So yeah, a veteran guy like Belichick, the question would be, okay, is he going to go somewhere? Are they going to give him full personnel say? Is he even going to want it anymore? And then, because look, he's getting up there in age. How much time does he want to take to rebuild a team right there?
Right.
So that's why I think there's a lot of jobs out there, and some of these jobs will appeal more to a veteran guy. Some of these jobs will appeal more to a younger guy. And see how.
And that's why I say I think the Chargers, like if you're a Harbaugh, and I really haven't heard him connected here yet. But like if you're Harbaugh, you're not, you don't want to leave a situation in college to come to rebuild for several years. You want to come and try and win now. And I think that's why the Chargers with him and the Raiders even what do you think happens with the Raiders? Because like you keep hearing, like, I'm a big Antonio Pierce fan. I like covering him,
Right.
but
Right.
you always hear with Davis that he wants the big name.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's very tough there, because Antonio Pierce did a great job winning over that locker room, and they were competitive, but I think you're exactly right. I think that from what I can gather, that there's a little bit of conflict in Mark Davis's mind, because he did kick himself for not sticking with Rich Bisaccia, who was his interim after John Gruden, and he went out and got Josh McDaniel, and that didn't work out. But again, if you have the opportunity to get somebody like Harbaugh, uh, you know, then you're kind of like, man, this one guy, yes, we know he was good as an interim right here, but this is a really talented guy who's taken a team to the Super Bowl, who's taken college football program to the national championship right here. So, it's not equal footing really if you're trying to decide what you want and how quickly you want to win.
And of course, in college, he was able to cheat to get there too. So in the NFL, he'd have
Right.
a harder time. Listen,
Okay, Buckeye.
The guy's a great coach. The guy's a great coach.
Right.
We all know that.
Yeah.
And I think he's better in a veteran type situation with a team that's ready to win within a couple years.
It's got to be the right place though too,
Right.
because from what I hear from people, like, he really wears you down. There was some people I asked, a couple teams, they said, oh God, I hope not. Because they said, oh, like, he really like is demanding, and it's just like people hate coming to work. Um,
Yeah,
so
I've heard that too.
Burns people out. Now, hey, this has been years later. Would he be toned down? Would he change his approach at all? I don't know. You can change your stripes that much.
I don't think so.
Yeah, right. So again, it's got to be the right place. I don't know if Eric Bieniemy was too hard for some of these people, then good Lord, what would Harbaugh?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, like, you always hear within, and that's why I say a veteran situation where you can win. So if he wears you down in 3 or 4 years and you get a Super Bowl title, do you
It's
care?
done.
But if you're
Right.
trying to build something where it's long-term sustainable, and if the ideal is to say, hey, you want these guys in place for 8-10 years, a Pete Carroll, John Schneider situation, then it's going to be a different direction for this team. What about like Seattle and New England? How are those jobs perceived?
New England was bumped up there. This is because what their history is as far as Robert Kraft being patient, being supportive. No, I mean he hasn't had to be super patient, during the time Belichick, but just because of the support they have there, it's a strong, stable organization there. They have some pieces. They need a lot of, they need a quarterback. They need more team speed and everything like that. But I had one person say, throw them up there right behind, because this person had uh, Chargers, Washington, Atlanta, and they said put them right behind Atlanta right there. So that was fourth. But I had somebody else who said, yeah, put them third from the bottom, or no, second from the bottom. So it kind of really just depends. I think that it depends on the kind of guy you are. From what I gather, I think Mike Vrabel wants that job. It means more to him. He's got history there and everything like that. So some people would look at that and want to go into a place like that. But if somebody who's, want to go in and win right now, this is not the job.
Well, and I also, because you have Gerard Mayo there too, who's done a really good job on the defense side of the ball. What about Seattle?
Seattle, that one, I'm trying to remember where that one was there. It wasn't really low. I'm just gonna look back at some of these text messages.
It's hard to keep track of all the
Okay,
texts and
right.
jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. This one guy had Chargers, then he had Seattle. This guy had Seattle at fifth.
So all
This
of them.
guy here has him in the middle. Yeah, just a little bit all over the place right there. Obviously they have a good core. Another guy here has them like top three, top four. Nobody had them. One guy had them at number two. But a lot of people feel like, hey, they've got a good core right there. And so, and it's not an awful place. They've got a good fan base and everything like that. But I don't know that people view this as a place that you're going to go in there and take them to a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Because I mean, Geno Smith is limited. They still need to have some needs and everything like that. But it's a solid job. It definitely was. None of them had them at the bottom, or even the bottom two, for this, ring.
Is there a name? I know Ben Johnson is the primo name, right, for the assistants. Is it a clear, and based on what you're hearing, because I know what I hear, but I'm curious what you hear. Is he the slam dunk name, or are there other guys that you say like, well, people think this guy is just as close to, as ready as he is?
He's basically the only real offensive name that you hear that like people are like die hard, like,
Right.
yes, this guy, is really, really good. I had asked a couple people, the NFLPA had put out their, the player survey, and a lot of guys were like, wait, how is Ben Johnson not number one as far as the offensive coordinators? Because, and these are front office guys who are like, if I get my GM job this offseason, he's the first guy I'm calling.
Right.
But everybody else, it's a lot of defensive guys,
Yeah.
guys that have had experience before, the Raheem Morrises, the Dan Quinns, Brian Flores, Steve Wilkes. As far as offensive names, there were names early on, but then like the home stretch of the season, some of those offensive guys kind of dropped off a little bit. Like Thomas Brown, even Kellen Moore dropped off a little bit as far as names that people were talking about, because entering the last week of November, I had sent out the same text blast, hey, putting together a list of the top 10 coaches' names, good amount of offensive guys in there. Then at the end of the season, asked for people's top fives, and those offensive guys had dropped down quite a bit. So it's interesting because it's been such the young offensive guy trend for a while, but now it seems like it's steering back towards defense. But our guys like Brian Callahan is going to get some looks. Shane Waldron's from Seattle is going to get some looks as well. Ben Johnson isn't the only offensive guy, but it's just the one that people feel the most strongly like, hey, this is potentially a real special.
And that's it's funny because even for Washington, 5 of their 7 names at the initial list are on defense. And for a heavily analytics based group, that's surprising. But you look at like Bobby Slowick, he's only been an OC for 1 year. Frank Smith, a guy in Miami I like. only an
Doesn't
OC
call
for 1
plays.
year.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like it may just be that side of the ball. Like I think Raheem Morris is overdue for another job.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
mean, you covered him here too. So like, I
Exactly.
like the way he's kind of evolved as a coach and what he's done to get back to this point.
Yes, exactly. I think the smartest thing for him was what he did in Atlanta, where he switched, to the offensive side of the ball to be their passing game coordinator, so he could learn that side, the offensive side. Um, and then he's back on the defense. And look, what he and Sean McVay did this year with the Rams, a very young
Right.
team, and those guys are young players who are really meaningful contributions. But I think also some teams probably look at what happened in Houston with D'Amico Ryans. They're like, look, this is a defensive guy, and they drafted a quarterback, but he was paired with a talented young offensive mind. So it doesn't have to be like David Tepper, did not go with a defensive guy because he felt like he needed an offensive guy to be married to Bryce Young the whole time. And now look what happened. So I think that smart teams, smart owners, team presidents will be like, hey, let's find the best leader, whether he's offensive or defensive, and we'll see. There'll be a plan in place for developing this young quarterback with who he puts on his team.
Yeah, and I think like it'll be curious to see if Dan Quinn is kind of paired with Seattle because he's got a history there. Lou Anarumo from Cincinnati is another name that he's done a really good job, but it's another defensive guy, and so it is a very unusual year, and like what you hear is
McDonald over in Baltimore, another defensive guy.
Yeah.
Vrabel obviously is going to be.
Get a guy who's a really good leader. And then make sure they have like D'Amico Ryans. They had a really good plan offensively. Now, the only problem is in another year, if it goes well, then he's definitely losing a guy, whether it's this year or next. But if you have a plan, you can get it done. So anyway, Mike, I appreciate your time. Busy week ahead for everybody and always like your insight. Tell people where they can find you.
On Twitter at by Mike Jones and at theathletic.com. You can find all of our work there.
Very good. Thanks, Mike.
All right, no problem, man.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Mike for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday with another episode, or if one warrants, over the weekend, if they do hire somebody Saturday or Sunday, I'll have another podcast out then. So I'll talk to you next time.